Welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, a recruiting and search business focused on the robotics and AI industries. The Machine Minds show is where we dive deep into the intricate world of robotics and artificial intelligence. As a staffing industry leader with a passion for the frontiers of technology, I'm pleased to be bringing you intimate conversations with the founders, investors, and trailblazers who are at the heart of the AI and robotics revolution. In each episode, we dig into their journeys, the applications of the products they're working on, and the breakthroughs that are shaping our future. Join us as we explore how these machine minds are transforming the way we live, work, and understand our world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just curious about this amazing field, you'll learn something new with each episode. Let's delve into the extraordinary. Let's delve into machine minds. Hello and welcome to Machine Minds. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, your robotics talent search partner. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Rosalind Shinkle, co-founder and CEO of Adagy Robotics. Thanks for being here today, Ros.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad we could get this on the calendar. Let's jump into it. So I like to have our guests share their backgrounds and set the stage before we dive into the meat of the show. Can you give an overview of your career up to the point of starting Adagy Robotics?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start from way young. We don't have to go into detail, but
I'd love to. Yeah, no, it's great because, everyone gets into this field from some different way. So, I'm sure other people out there might resonate with your story and feel inspired.
Okay. We'll see. I've wanted to sort of start companies in the tech space since I was pretty young. It's a weird thing to want as a kid, but I think I saw it as a cool way to have an outsized impact. And then I studied mechanical engineering in school, loved making things, like building physical things. And then I kind of, I had one mechanical engineering internship that I found was pretty boring. I was going to work for a robotics company, and I was making a computer box for a robot, but my whole project that summer was just one computer box. The most exciting thing was the O-ring groove on the computer box. Terrible stuff. And the guy in the office next door to me was designing robotic path planning algorithms. And I just spent the whole summer kind of bothering him and being like, how does this work? This is so cool.
Yeah.
So then I switched into the software side of robotics. So I ended up getting a master's degree in robotics, which is just like Mech-E, CS, and EE all in one. And then I got to go work at Boston Dynamics, which was engineers' wonderland. It was so much fun. It was really cool. I was on the spot manipulation team. So the spot is the yellow quadrupedal robot. And it has a 6-off arm on top of it. And I was on the team that wrote all the software and controls for that arm. So I did stuff like write the algorithms for how the robot can inspect a car using its arm, or write trajectory generation algorithms for the arm. And it was so much fun.
I bet.
Yeah. And then I was there and I realized that right now is this really crazy time in robotics. There's so much happening, recent advances in ML. There's a ton of fundraising going on. And I realized that, it felt like the right time to go and start something of my own.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a great foundation. Yeah, I can only imagine being at Boston Dynamics working on those sorts of projects. Even people who don't really know about robotics, that's what they see. They're so good at their videos and everything like that. So.
It was so crazy. I always say it's probably the closest to fame I'll ever have. It's just being in contact, working on that robot.
That's so fun. Speaking of fame and Boston Dynamics, I was just at a conference and Mark Rayburn was speaking, and he's talking about how, their first video that went viral, they never actually put it online. Someone had just ripped it from the website and posted it on YouTube. He was like, and her name was gave her
Yeah.
handle on YouTube, and the lady who did it, she's like, that was me, she was in the audience.
No way. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was so funny.
That's so funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so after that obviously all the clicks
Mhm.
and all the impressions and everything like that solidified how important it was. So then they kind of doubled down on it.
Wow, that's awesome.
Learn something new every day. So okay, let's
true organic fame.
Organic fame, right? Yeah, it wasn't intentional. Didn't even know it was on, like, YouTube wasn't even that big then. So yeah, crazy. So you did all of that, realized now's the time to start a company. But when did the idea for Adagy Robotics first come to you?
It was around the time that I left. It was like I realized that deploying and scaling robots is still an unsolved problem. Deploying and scaling robots at speed, and I think it's a problem that ML can be really good at solving. And so that was sort of the idea that I left BD with. Yeah.
Amazing. And you have a co-founder,
yes.
Kathleen. Where did you both meet?
We met at Boston Dynamics. She was also on the Spot team. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
She did some amazing stuff on Spot. She helped write the API. She wrote this like tool that allows you to sort of a GarageBand style tool that allows you to construct dances for the robot.
I've seen those videos.
Yeah. It's so cool. She's just like a powerhouse. And she was working at Tesla at the time. And we had stayed in touch. We were close. There weren't tons of women on the Spot team. Mm-hmm. And I think that bonds you really nicely. So we had stayed in touch. She was working on some incredible stuff at Tesla. She did like decision making for autopilot, lane changes. And then she also did end-to-end learning, training and deploying end-to-end models on the Tesla Optimus robot. And so I called her because she's like the best ML engineer that I know. And I was like, hey, what if we did this thing? Wouldn't that be kind of fun?
That's so cool. Okay, so you worked together on the same team, saw how great each other were. She moved on, and then you were like, I've got an idea. Come and do this with me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
exactly. All right. Perfect.
Exactly. And to her credit, I texted her like one day I was like, hey, what if we did the YC app? And then she was like, maybe we should get on a call later. I was so nervous. I thought she was going to have all these problems. And she basically was just like, yeah, I'll do it. Like, I'm down.
That's so cool. Okay.
Yeah, she's incredible. Yeah.
She sounds like the type of co-founder that you need. Yeah, I remember meeting her as well, just briefly, and she seemed awesome.
Yeah, she's great.
So we first met less than a year ago. You were just about to kick things off. I don't think you'd even incorporated yet or anything like that. Yeah. So you're still really in the early stage, but even so, every startup has its challenges and also key milestones. But for you, what have been some of the biggest hurdles that you've faced in the early days, and how have you overcome those?
I think, one thing is we're both technical founders. We come from sort of slightly different perspectives on robotics, but I come from more of a classical background. Kathleen has this like hardcore ML tilt, but that means we don't have a lot of sales experience or sort of general, I don't know, legal, how to deal with lawyers and stuff. And so I think sales is probably the biggest one. It's a skill. We had to learn that skill basically. And I think YC was super helpful with that for us. I think it's a pretty intimidating problem, but once we phrased it as an engineering problem that can be solved, it felt a lot more tractable.
Yeah, I bet. So you mentioned YC a couple of times, and speaking of milestones specifically, especially in the early days, getting into that, it's significant for any startup, and I'm sure it's challenging, but it can also be super helpful. Can you tell us a bit more about that experience, how it's impacted the company's trajectory, and just kind of what you've learned through that? Yeah,
it's been incredible. I think from the jump. So one thing it did, there's this going from 0 to 1 is very hard for a startup. And I think for me in particular, as a first-time founder, it was like, okay, I need sort of like some validation of this concept, probably to be able to convince someone to leave their amazing job at Tesla to join me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I need probably some customers to actually get that validation. And I probably, like, to be able to actually get customers, I'll probably actually need someone to work with me and a little bit of funding so that we can actually, you know, create a product. And it felt like just going around in this circle. And then I realized that we could apply for the YC, for YC, and it sort of all came together really nicely. It was like, oh, if I can invite Kathleen to fill out this application with me, and if we get it, it's a little bit more of a guarantee. You know, we'll be able to pay ourselves for like a year while we validate this. We'll have some mentorship on the business side. So it made it really easy to just like get that sort of, it was like a single precipitating event at the beginning, which was really, really helpful. And then beyond that, just like fundraising, you know, it made it really, they're so good at distilling information, and they have so much data that it goes back to that thing of like, we can formulate this as an engineering problem, and we know how to do engineering problems. So we were able to fundraise really successfully. And then it gave us a great network. We have tons of lasting friends from it. I'm sitting in an office right now that we're sharing with another company from our YC batch.
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah,
awesome.
It was amazing for the company. Yeah.
That's awesome. Solid foundation then. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I know we jumped into this, and I do this is my bad. I do this a lot. And I just assume people know who the guests are going to be and who the companies are, what they do, etc., or they're going to look it up. But for the listeners who haven't done that, can you give us an overview in more detail about what Adagy Robotics does, where the idea really, I know you touched on where it came from, but firsthand, what the problem you saw was and how you plan to help that.
Yeah, exactly. So what do? We are a remote, we are a remote interventions company. So when your robot gets lost or stuck, or it tries to pick up something several times and it can't figure out how to do it successfully, your robot can make an API call to our system, and we'll connect it to a trained operator in our command center. We'll take over and tele up the robot through the recovery and then resume autonomous operation. That basically means you can pull back your on-site deployed engineers, and you can scale your robots. You can scale your robot deployments a lot faster, because now you, instead of needing 99.999% reliability in order to scale your robot deployments, you can hit 95 or 98% reliability, which is much more still very impressive, and also much more realistic for robotics companies, and start to scale right then.
That's great.
Thank you. Yeah. It's really exciting. I think, you know, Kathleen and I saw firsthand that this is an unsolved problem in robotics. It's like how to really scale quickly. I think a lot of robotics companies will do small proof of concept, a small number of proof of concept deployments that are incredibly costly, both operationally and also, you know, it costs a lot of money to have engineers on site with your robot around the clock. But then autonomous vehicles came along, and AVs, if there's an engineer on site, it's not autonomous. You know, they didn't have the luxury of doing that. So they had to build these remote intervention systems. And I think that's becoming much more normal in robotics now too. And so far companies have had to build it themselves. And so we're basically offering an outsourcing solution for that.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. I'm sure it also helps with the hurdle of having a company, like, let's say in agriculture, right? They may not have the ability to have an engineer on site or upskill their staff to look after it. Or you've got a farmer that's like, I don't want to deal with that. You know, that's sometimes the hurdle that I hear in some of these industries. Is, you know, it's a bit daunting to put a robot, especially your first robot or first few robots there, if you don't know how to operate it, or if you're worried 100%. About it. Yeah. What happens when it goes wrong?
Yeah, it has to be, things have to be easy to use. And I think in robotics, it can be really hard to use, and good design can answer a lot of that. But at some point, it's like maybe we also just need to have a human in the loop. But you don't need to. You can't put that burden on the end user. You just can't. You can't be like, hey, come spend however many thousands of dollars on this robot, and then also train yourself or train your staff to be responsible for it in this totally new paradigm for work that you've never seen before.
Right.
You know, good luck. Automation. The future is here. Yeah. It doesn't
deal with it.
Yeah. And as roboticists, that's really hard because to us, 95% is like incredible.
Yeah.
Like that is so reliable in many ways. So
yeah, that's something that you hear a lot of the time as well when we're in these debates about it and talking about scale. It's getting to that 99%. It's really tough, but people have a hesitation because humans were not 100% anytime, but if you're trying to replace or add to a fleet with robots, you can only really sell that 99%, right? If it's anything less, which is still, it's super high. Like you said, it's super high. 95% is really high, but then you get naysayers, or you get the pushback, or you get everything else that goes with it.
Yeah. If your cell phone worked 95% of the time.
Seriously. If my laptop didn't want to refresh. It's so true.
You would probably rather use a notebook than rely on Google Docs if Google Docs only worked 95% of the time. And that's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's a very high bar, and putting something like this in place, you can totally see that the benefit. I think also a conversation that I was having the other day, or a kind of roundtable, was about robot deployments and what you do for like servicing or remote clients. And sometimes it's not even a service issue, because if it gets stuck, or if there's a problem that can do in the field, right? And if you've got a farm and one gets stuck, it's an issue. They're like, oh, well, we'll just leave an extra robot there. And it's like, wow, that's a lot of, if they've got X amount of robots, or even in the hospital setting, one of the people we're speaking to, similar sort of things. So like, if they have X amount on site, we'll give them extra. And I'm like, it makes sense, but it's a lot of spend to just.
It's a lot of spend, and I think these are different phases of in the growth of the robotics company too. Like, there's like validation of the need phase, and then there's optimizing margins phase, and I think that a lot of those companies are probably just validating the need still.
Amazing. Okay, that's really cool. I'm sure the listeners are going to see the value in this, but also even if you're thinking about starting a company, this is a great way of optimizing your uptime and also mitigating some of the pushback as well. 100%. So you obviously have a clear mission here. Let's talk more about the vision, who you want to be serving. Do you see at a certain point all field robotics type companies are using you, or is this like a bridge? What's the overall vision?
I think it's like the vision is we want robots everywhere, and we want all robots using Adagy Robotics as their edge case handling.
Nice. And what's really driving the company and the values that guide your work right now? It's because it's still early.
It sounds like it's still early. Yeah. So I think when we talk about values, it's probably mostly about Kathleen's and my shared values and what we want to see and encourage within the company. I think technical excellence is the most important thing. I don't know. Well, these are all important things. Technical excellence is key. That one's pretty straightforward. I don't know if I need to elaborate on that.
No. I think it goes hand in hand with what you're trying to achieve as well. Yeah, for sure.
And then it's really important to us to have fun with what we're doing, and I think that goes hand in hand with technical excellence too. Like, I think if you're making really cool, interesting, cutting edge stuff, you're having fun doing it. It's important to us to move really fast on things. I think that's important for a startup, and also important for morale. just got to keep moving and really attack the problem.
Yeah.
And then we also care a lot about impact. I think internal and external, like, for example, internally, if you're doing code cleanup or you're doing a tool change that improves everyone's workflow by 5%, we think that's really sick. And also, if you make a tool that externally, if we make a tool that every single robotics company uses, that's really sick. Like, we want to see Adagy everywhere.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. I love what you said about moving quickly as well for morale and everything like that, because I think that sometimes gets lost with the startup or with companies, should I say. Startups, we used to moving quickly and acting, but sometimes people get a little bit too risk averse and like overanalyze things. And from really smart, ambitious, or to attract and retain really smart, ambitious engineers and team who look at friends, colleagues in the space doing exciting stuff. And at the moment, it's not that, I guess there isn't a short supply of exciting things out there. But but it's still not a ripe market in terms of everyone's hiring, everyone's investing and things like that. But it starts someone's wheels turning of, oh, I could be more engaged doing something else. So if you're moving quickly, if you're stimulated, if you're tackling problems, if you're having an impact and you're engaged, by default, you'll be engaged in the work that you're doing, you're going to retain your team as well.
Yeah. And I think 100%. And I think I'll actually shout out sales feeding my engineering instincts. I think it's really easy to get into a cycle where it's easy to overanalyze. It's safe to be in a problem solving mode instead of like actually, testing, because then you can find out that you're wrong. But in sales, I guess they say that a fast no is the second best thing to getting to a yes. And so with a startup, same thing. It's like, it doesn't, we could analyze as much as we want, but the most important thing is to just actually know whether we're right or wrong, and formulate a hypothesis, validate it, go on to the next thing as quickly as possible.
Perfect. So you talked about funding. I know we're talking a bit offline. You've secured funding. That's awesome.
Thank you.
You've finished YC now, which means you're kind of off to the races. Next, it's going to be scaling the team and operations and stuff like that. So let's talk about some of the what you're going to be looking at next, because hiring a team is so important, and the company's success kind of hinges on its team, right? So you're about to kick that process off. How are you going to approach building the team, and what you're really going to be looking for at first?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so. Like, the most baseline is only hire the most cracked engineers. We're starting with people in our network, and then we'll probably build out from there.
Of course. I
think we want to make sure they're bought in on the mission and excited about the mission. This company is a little different. We're not building the robot. This is that impact play again. So we want to find people who are excited about that impact. Alignment of values is really, really important. And then I think they have to know what it means to work at a startup, and work at a startup that is this early, and be excited about that. That's a challenge in and of itself, no matter which type of startup you're at. And I think finding people who are excited about the grind and about the risk is really important too.
Love that. Yeah. It's so key. It is so key, because you and your co-founder, you've come from big companies, done the whole big company thing. So to take that risk and step away and go to a startup, it firsthand, but you also need people that have done it and that are hungry for it, because it's very different. Less resources, fast timelines, multiple hats. It sounds so cliche when I say it. But it's like, oh, multiple hats.
You can say it as much as you want, but doing it, you can't overstate it, I think. And be ready to throw. You got to be comfortable throwing out your work and changing direction, and comfortable with uncertainty, which I don't think is a commonly held trait all the time.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't matter. I mean, I obviously focus on hiring for startups and building those kinds of teams. And it doesn't matter how many times you say that to someone or communicate when you qualify them. It's like, yeah, no, that's fine. It sounds fine. I'm like, okay, like let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you know what that really means?
Yeah. Tell me, because I need to hire these people. Do you have a good way, or can you only find out by testing?
So what I would say is never judge a book by its cover. Like, and this is for both ways. Sometimes people look at like the shiny object thing and like, oh, I only want people from Tesla, for example.
Yeah.
You know, to use your co-founder's company because I know that the bar's high or whatever. But that doesn't translate, one, to it's not always a great hire, two, not right for your company, and three, they're comfortable in ambiguity and pivoting on a dime and all of that stuff. So scenario-based questioning, also asking for examples of when, and then sometimes the reason that I say don't judge a book by its cover as well is because sometimes people will look and say, oh, that's a big company, they're not going to be right for us. But you don't know internally, there's always like a startup within a big company or a project that's just like more skunk worksy or R&D, and oh, we had to change all the time because it's a new product. Engineers are notorious for not fleshing out their LinkedIn profile, for example. And then if you're really good and you're engaged, you're probably not sending your resume out or updating your profile. So having the conversation, finding out what they've done and asking those questions, to me, are the best ways. And if they haven't, scenario is a second best thing, because someone can think that, you know, especially if they're a few years out of school, maybe they've done their master's or the PhD and then they've been working in a great company for a few years, but their friends and colleagues have gone off to startups. They might have that the grass is greener kind of mentality, or that seems exciting, but you just don't know your own personality trait until you're in that situation, like who you really are. And some people thrive in a startup. It's addictive. You know, you'll see it. People like career startup people, and they're like, yeah, I'm a 0 to 10, and then I need to go to the next thing. So scenario-based questioning, and then examples are the best.
Noted.
Yeah.
I think that's such a good point that you make, that it's like even the candidate can think that they're right for this role. And your job is probably to figure out if they're actually right for that role.
Yeah,
to the extent possible.
It's definitely that. I mean, I also speak to a lot of candidates because some of the roles that I hire, you know, super technical, but they might come from a very strong research background, and then they think they're ready for product. But when you talk more about that and what that means, and sometimes it's past my qualification because I dig into it and then it sounds like they're all about it, but then the hiring manager or the founder is like, I'm still not getting that real product feel when we talk about like our timelines, pushing product out, etc. It's just not clicking. So that's another thing to kind of be aware of, depending on the type of roles that you're hiring for, because unless you've got someone that's come from a research background as a founder or a leader that knows how to translate that into, because I think not every company has the resources to have an R&D or research team that feeds into. So if you've got a really cool, a really strong engineer or whoever it is that's come from that background, how are you going to translate that and get that into your product or your milestones is going to be crucial. Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah. Something else that's important is definitely culture. When we talked about the values, it's just the two of you right now, but you're going to first tap into your network. So I'm sure it's going to be people you know, you value, you know that you're aligned with. But bigger picture, what kind of company culture do you want to foster?
I think the most important thing is just widespread mutual respect. I think respect across job functions too. So engineers have to respect sales, have to respect PMs, and so on. And it's also really important for us to have a diverse and inclusive team. That's always at the forefront of our minds.
Love that. Cool. And how are you going to ensure? I don't know. Some of this might just be too early, but I like to ask the questions as well because it gets everyone's wheels turning. But how are you going to ensure effective collaboration and
I love this
oh,
question.
really? And then also innovation, right? Because you I guess I've talked about this a lot of times on the show, but you have to balance innovation with your actual milestones, your product, especially at the early stage, because you want to hit your next round of funding or get your new customers in, etc. Deployment.
Yeah. And I think like we might not be at a stage where we can do the Google 80/20. We had something similar at BD as well. And so because we might be not unable to sort of like enshrine that in actual rules, I think having a culture that encourages that is really important. I think when Kathleen and I talk about this, we think about it goes back to that mutual respect thing, and it goes back to like everyone has to feel comfortable at work. And I think you have to feel comfortable to be creative, and you have to be creative as a startup. You have to be creative to survive. So I think that comfort is like baseline necessity. And then I think just like encouraging play in the culture as well, like that fun, that spirit of just like let's just keep trying stuff, and let's try new stuff, and let's try weird stuff, and let's give it a little technical dazzle.
Love that. Yeah, those are the sort of things that keep people happy at work, though.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
It does get tough to balance everything, but that makes people want to come into work as well, especially in this day and age of people being fully remote or things like that. It's harder to build culture, camaraderie, and everything. But in the hardware world, you kind of expect it. And if you've got an environment that is happy, fun, engaging, but also tackling technical problems, that is just invigorating you. You're going to want to be there. You know, it doesn't always feel like work.
Exactly.
Let's look at the broader industry now. What are some of the things or some of the trends you're most excited about, and innovations in robotics, AI that you're keeping an eye on?
I think now is just such an exciting time in robotics. I think recent advances in ML have sort of blown things open, and I think the fundraising environment has reflected that back to us, and that doesn't often happen. So it's just like a really exciting time to be in robotics generally. I think specifically, like, I'm really excited about how models trained on internet scale data mean that a robot can look at the world and in zero shot try to actually do something moderately well with what it has, which is kind of insane actually in the context of robotics history. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it is.
And then I think also diffusion policies kind of I guess I'll say new ML techniques like diffusion and attention kind of are these powerful tools, and we haven't seen the end of them yet. You know, we're still figuring out how far they're going to take us in robotics, and I think it's just like a really exciting time.
It really is.
Is that an answer?
That is a great answer. No, it's true. It's true. I think I love what the training from video type of scenario as well, right? Like,
it's so crazy. Yeah,
it blows my mind. Obviously, you've got the what do you call it? Like the demonstration learning or like mimicking and stuff like that, which you can kind of get. But just to say, like, hey, here's a data set of people playing football, soccer. Sorry, from England. People playing football and learn that transition. Got to keep a lookout for our listeners.
You've seen Ted Lasso.
Yeah. Oh, good. Great. That's exactly how it goes.
Someone say that to you every day.
No, but it's a great show. I loved it. But to think that a robot can learn from that, like you said, do it to a pretty good standard, zero shot. It's wild. It is wild.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect.
Of course not. But it's
yeah,
a
I think
foundation to like start. It's like using ChatGPT right now. You know, if you're like, hey, I want to write whatever it is, it's not perfect when it comes out, but it's a good starting point and gets your own the foundation for whatever you want to build off, and then you go in and tweak it, right? I think you'd be a little sloppy or crazy to just use whatever comes out without reading.
that's how I'm generating all my responses to this.
Oh, really? Oh, great. Just real time. That's awesome.
Yeah, real time.
So what does the future look like? Obviously, we've got the team building. You've got an office space now, but can you share any upcoming projects or short-term, long-term goals that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, and I should have mentioned this earlier. I think I didn't. We are, one of the really exciting things that we're going to do is as we start to have, so right now, all of our responses come from trained operators. But as we start to collect enough data from those operators and how they behave, we want to train models to be able to suggest responses to our operators. There's still going to be a human in the loop, so it's still going to be human oversight, but we're going to allow those operators to move a lot more quickly and behave more regularly, perhaps, by using ML to suggest actions to those operators.
Nice.
And I think we're going to start having suggestions in the next 2 months.
Wow.
And so basically we're gonna start layering that in. It's gonna be on a per robot, maybe even per operator basis first. Very, very lightweight, very probably overfit models in the beginning. And yeah, I think we're gonna start getting to layer those in the next 2 months, which I'm excited about.
That's really cool. Fast progress.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, before we go, any advice for aspiring founders of startups within the robotic space or just in general? Obviously, don't go after your idea. I think that's the first piece of advice.
Come work for us.
Come work for us. That's a great one.
Yeah, that's my advice. I think just do it. Like it's that same thing. Fail fast, fail often, and you're not going to be able to plan it all out. So just maybe plan to some degree, but just get started.
Amazing. And do you think the YC route is for everyone or finding something similar? I mean, I don't know enough about what that brings to the table for someone in your position or at that stage.
I'll plug YC with everything I've got.
Yeah.
I think that I can't imagine. I mean, I'm sure we would be okay. But I think it is an accelerator in the truest sense of the word. And I think people sometimes have hesitation about going after it with hardware adjacent startups. But it was awesome. It was really awesome for us.
So super valuable. Great.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay. Where can people find you and follow you, your progress, Kathleen and Adagy Robotics?
Please, well, you can email me, ROS at adagyrobotics.com. Find us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can link in the show notes.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. We can put all of that in there. Awesome. Well, look, thank you, Ros. I really appreciate you sharing all of this with us. I would love to have you back on down the line to hear about all the progress and how the team's built. And I know that soon you'll be able to announce the fundraise and all of that good stuff. So we'll be keeping an eye out on that for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was so much fun. And I love this show.
I'm glad. Thank you. That means a lot. All right. Have a good one.
All right. Have a great day.
Bye.